Alright, so I was reading the Bible and noticed something strange. The Gospels show Jesus as a baby, and then they skip to him being 12. And then there's nothing. 18 years of his life just missing. But I mean, that's normal, right? Men just usually teleport to different ages at that time. I mean, that's common knowledge. Why hasn't that happened to me? Please tell me why that hasn't happened to me yet. I just want to have a housewife and kids, and I really want to skip to that before AI takes all the jobs. But in one moment, you have Jesus being a baby, and then hard cut, a grown man getting baptized in the Jordan River. No stories, no miracles, not even an explanation. And as a boy who desperately wants to have a wife, as a boy who desperately wants to teleport into a time where he has a wife, kids, and a really nice grown-out beard, I had to know. What was Jesus doing for 18 years? You like how I made that the title? I'm sure you did, because why else would you be here watching? Anyways, I started digging, and within like 12 minutes of research, which is where the truth is always found, I got something absolutely insane. Apparently, there's some people that think Jesus spent his missing years in India. Yes, India. As in, baby in a manger, 12-year-old in the temple, and then backpacking in Asia. I wish I was joking about this, but the theory mostly blew up from this one guy named Nicholas Notovich. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't know, and I don't care enough to look it up. Anyways, it was in the 1800s, and according to him, while traveling through Tibet, he got injured and ended up in a monastery. And the monks were basically like, oh yeah, by the way, we have ancient records of Jesus visiting us, so yeah, that's pretty chill. And apparently in these records, they called him Isa, or Issa. I don't know how to pronounce that either, I'm just guessing right now. And it claimed he studied with Hindu teachers and Buddhist monks before going back to Judea, which, if true, would be maybe one of the biggest discoveries in human history. So naturally, I thought, why is nobody talking about this? Why isn't this in history class? How do I acquire a wife and kids? That last question is more personal, but nonetheless, I want answers. But the reason why the story of Jesus going to India isn't well known is because it doesn't have any historical backing, and it messes up everything. Later, scholars actually went to the monastery to verify the claim, and the monks basically said, yeah, we have no idea what you're talking about, bro. You're talking about this guy who said he met you face to face? Oh wait, that guy? Yeah, no, we don't know him. We didn't meet a guy named Joseph Smith, though. What? Anyways, essentially, they had no manuscripts, no evidence, no records, no ancient scroll backpacking Jesus, and historians today overwhelmingly see it as forgery or, at best, a fun vacation story just made up. So if Jesus didn't spend his years doing an ancient study abroad, where was he? And this is where it gets interesting, because when I went back to scripture, the answer wasn't dramatic at all. I'll go ahead and read from Luke chapter 2, verses 51 to 52. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong page. It says, and he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and was subject unto them, but his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man. That's it. No secret monastery, no secret miracles, no lost gospel of teenage Jesus. We'll get into that one later. Just Nazareth. And I wanted to sit with that for a second, because Nazareth wasn't the nicest place in the world. It was small, obscure, the type of town where you know everybody in the town, everybody knows you, and nobody ever leaves. Jesus wasn't in a monastery looking through scrolls. He was probably working with his dad, getting sawdust stuck in his eyes. In a village where the most exciting thing that's going to happen all week is the goats going loose into the market. God incarnate, living an ordinary life. That's honestly harder for me to accept than the India story. And I wasn't going to take that for an answer. So I kept digging. Because if the India story was fake, what did early Christians actually believe about those 18 years? And this is where it got really interesting. Or actually, not insanely interesting. It actually just made Jesus look more normal. Take Justin Martyr. He was writing in the 2nd century, which is way closer than any guy in the 1800s. And Justin casually mentions that Jesus made farming tools, yokes and plows, those sorts of things. Not miracles, not secret travels, not Jesus the Explorer, gardening tools. Then there's Irenaeus, who talks about Jesus passing in every human stage of life, childhood, youth, and adulthood. He made a strong emphasis that Christ did not skip the human experience. He entered fully into it. And honestly, that really hit me. Because maybe that silence in scripture was just Jesus learning and growing as a human in the most ordinary ways. Just living and growing, helping his family, working, and building physical and social skills. And maybe this is the exact thing that I'm looking for to answer my question. But no, I'm not going to take that for an answer. That messes with me because I want the exciting story. I want Jesus fighting wolves in the Himalayas. I want him debating monks in their monastery in the snowy mountaintops. And I want him to just write me a letter specifically to me on how to find a wife. Please, God, can you send that one to me? No? Okay. Once you start researching Jesus' missing years on the internet, you don't really get away from it. You leave normal Christianity very quickly, and frankly, friends, it got weird. Friends. That's right. Just by watching this video, I consider you a friend. But if you want to be my best friends, like my ride or die, my second hand, like I'm literally going to mention you in my wedding speech if that day ever comes, then go ahead and subscribe, because subscribing makes you my best friend. Bestest best friend. And I'm trying to collect them, so please be one of them. Everything's fine. This is fine. I'm fine. You should subscribe. Anyways, after looking into the India theory, I found people saying Jesus went to Britain. Yes, as in like tea, rain, apologizing for things that aren't their fault. Apparently, some legends say that Jesus traveled with this guy named Joseph, who according to later medieval legends, may have been a tin merchant. And now, if you hear the word tin and you think of this guy, then your brain is practically like my brain. What does that have to do with anything that we're talking about? Absolutely nothing. Teenage Jesus was basically on a business trip. So just imagine a guy in ancient Britain selling tin, and all of a sudden, a 16-year-old Jesus goes walking by speaking Aramaic. Oi, who's that? Oh, no idea. Says his father owns everything though. Can you please laugh at that little skit? Thank you. And before you ask, no, there's literally no historical backing for this. Most of these things are just like medieval fictions and not real historical evidences of Jesus's life. They're literally just people writing for the heck of it. And honestly, at this point, I should have just stopped. But the internet is a place that I live, and the internet takes things further. So here are some honorable mentions of things that I've found on the internet. And I won't be making many comments on them because they're kind of outlandish. Some people think Jesus went to Egypt after the temple incident and studied under Egyptian priests. Some people believe he lived with ancient Jewish monastic groups in the desert, which is where he got all of his teachings on prayer and fasting from. One medieval Japanese legend claims Jesus actually made it all the way to Japan, lived until he was 106, and is buried in a small village called Shingo. There is a tomb. There are souvenirs. There is a Jesus Museum gift shop made off of complete lies. This isn't true. And someone on the internet, I will not name who it is, claims Jesus visited the lost city of Atlantis. I'm not going to dignify that one with the transition. Moving on. But here's the thing. I wasn't the only curious person in the history of all times. No, actually a lot of people ask the same question I'm asking right now. And some of them just decided to write down whatever the heck they wanted. And there's a text called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. Don't mistake that with the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. Different book, equally confusing name, but this one claims to fill in Jesus' childhood. Years of stories passed down through oral tradition. And I need you to understand, some of these stories are crazier than your pickleball tournament in Santa Fe, California. 5 years old, Jesus is playing in a stream. He collects mud and shapes it into sparrows. And then someone tells Joseph that Jesus is violating the Sabbath by doing crafts. So Joseph shows up, starts lecturing Jesus. And Jesus just claps his hands and turns all the clay sparrows into actual sparrows and says, "Be off, fly away, and remember me, you who are now alive." And the sparrows literally took off and flew away. That's absolutely insane. And the whole remember me thing that Jesus was saying, bro, you're 5, okay? What? But then it takes a really, really, really dark turn. A little boy decides to destroy the little pools of water that Jesus made. And Jesus angrily curses him, and the boy just falls down and dies right there on spot. Then another boy bumps into Jesus in the street, and Jesus gets really mad at him and really irritated and says, "You won't continue your journey." And the kid just falls straight on the floor and dies. Yeah, it actually got so bad that the neighbors of Jesus went to Joseph and said, "Hey, can you tell your kid to stop like cursing and killing everybody?" At one point, nobody even dared to talk to him because they were scared he was going to curse or cripple their entire family. Yeah, baby Jesus was an absolute menace. This is so far from the Sunday school Jesus that I was taught about, and now I'm sort of reading basically a supervillain origin story. But there's more. At 7 years old, his mother sends him to go get some water, and he accidentally breaks the jars. But instead of going back home and getting a new jar, he just uses the cloth of his shirt to get the water, and it just stays in there. No jar, just absolute vibes and a really wet shirt. And then, get this, At 8 years old, Jesus plants 1 grain of wheat, which grows an entire field of wheat, and he takes it and shares it with the poor and giving it to the rest of his community. Joseph was probably very, very happy that Jesus was starting to show like some good attributes instead of just killing everybody in sight. But if you keep going, we reach a section that I like to call the teacher situation. So basically, multiple teachers try to educate Jesus multiple times. Every single one of them ends up either baffled, humiliated, or begging Joseph to take him back. At one point, a teacher tries to get Jesus to repeat the alphabet, and Jesus starts explaining the metaphysical geometry of the letter alpha in detail, until the teacher basically has a breakdown and says, and I quote, "Woe is me, I've brought shame on myself taking on this child." In my book, that's a valid crash out. But before you have a crisis, all of this stuff is considered by historians not historically accurate, so it's not real. But I feel like these documents are a good indication that people were asking the same questions in the early centuries, just as I am right now, which is kind of reassuring. But instead of just wondering, they decided to just fill in the gaps themselves, and then all of a sudden they got a 5-year-old smiting people to death. But here's what's wild. Apparently the sparrow story, where Jesus turns the clay into actual sparrows that fly away, that made it all the way to the Quran.
Yeah, it's kind of bonkers. You should definitely look this one up. It's crazy.
Across centuries, across religions, people couldn't stop wondering about the hidden years of Jesus, which makes the silence of scripture sound unreasonably and unfathomably loud. Honestly, at this point, I think I just kept researching because I didn't want to deal with the fact that the Son of God spent 18 years just doing normal stuff. Maybe I wasn't searching for where Jesus went. Maybe I was trying to avoid where scripture says that he stayed. The Gospel of Luke says Jesus was in Nazareth, and maybe that's the point. Before the miracles, before the crowds, before the cross, the Son of God spent years in the ordinary. Not because he was behind, but because he was preparing. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just making up excuses for myself and why I haven't done anything really big or cinematic in my life just yet. Maybe it just sucks feeling stuck in life. All right, well, that's the end of the video. Bye.